The first shot of the movie shows us a delivery truck with Illinois license plates, but this movie doesn't take place in Illinois. This is actually a little sign for fans that Curse of Chucky would take the franchise back to its roots, that this entry would return to horror by focusing on suspense and psychological manipulation more in line with the first movie, Child's Play, which took place in Chicago, Illinois. Appropriately, this movie would honor the original in many ways, from new characters filling the shoes of classic characters, bringing back iconic kills, and even secrets hidden on computer screens and in the background of an old friend's apartment. To learn about all of the ways that this movie brought back elements of Child's Play and many other details you might have missed, stick around to the end of this video. This video is sponsored by Amazon Music. I've been excited to do this episode ever since I started covering the Chucky franchise 2 years ago, because this is by far the best Chucky movie. No, I'm not supposed to say my opinion, but come on, it's not even close. If you didn't already know, you may be surprised to learn that Curse was directed by the same director who did Seed. These movies could not be more different. Seed was a raunchy, colorful, over-the-top dark comedy, while Curse is a dark, subdued, tragic suspense film. But you may be less surprised by this quick sobering up that takes place between these two if you know who that director is. It's Don Mancini, the original writer and creator of Child's Play. As I mentioned, the tone of this movie goes back towards that 1988 original, but what I didn't mention is it goes past that and keeps going into its own territory. And in my opinion, this is how you play to Chucky's strengths. Of course, this is not a review. You're here for things you missed, so why don't we get back into them? For the first time in the franchise, we don't start with Chucky coming back to life, but rather by meeting our other characters, starting with a paraplegic woman named Nika Pierce and her mom, Sarah Pierce. We see that Sarah has some health issues because her bedside table is filled with anxiety medications and antidepressants. This is an important detail that comes back later and helps cast doubt on the idea that Chucky is really alive. In the original Child's Play, we as the audience know that Chucky is alive, but the adults in the story don't believe that he is. Curse puts its own twist on this by making the audience doubt that Chucky's alive. Obviously, if you've seen a Chucky movie before, you go into this one thinking that he is alive, just like all the others, but when we don't see proof of that until much later, you start to wonder if one of the human characters is simply using a good guy doll to cover up his or her own criminal actions. I just wish they would have left out this opening credit that says Brad Dourif as the voice of Chucky. I get why they have to put that in there contractually, but it would have been better if the movie made us doubt that this doll was the real Chucky and then hit us with that surprise, actually it is Chucky. You could get rid of a couple other shots too to really go all in on the mystery aspect, but one thing you may have noticed was the elevator inside of Nika's house. It's the same kind of old-fashioned elevator seen in the Barclays apartment in the first movie. We also see a Chucky POV, which I don't think we've seen since Child's Play 1. We see Charles Lee Ray's human form that we haven't seen since the first one, and near the end of the movie, Nika stabs the Chucky doll with a knife, and the fluff from inside the doll shoots up in the air and then slowly floats down on her. It almost looks like snow. The first movie takes place entirely in the snow. But Curse isn't just here for superficial visual callbacks to 1988. If you think about the character dynamics, there are even more similarities. For one, Chucky finally has a new best friend to the end. That is, a young kid that he psychologically manipulates. Instead of Andy this time, it's the little girl Alice. He keeps his true nature a secret by only communicating with her and through her, because she's too young to understand that dolls shouldn't be sentient.
Oh, Chucky wants to know what's for dinner.
Chucky wants to watch the 9 o'clock news.
And he doesn't hold back any graphic language.
He said that life's a and then you die bleeding like a stuck pig.
He said Aunt Maggie was a real bitch and got what she deserved.
In addition to the child-to-doll relationship, the child in each movie has another adult who's close to them. In Curse of Chucky, Alice has a special bond with her Aunt Nika, and in Child's Play, Andy has his Aunt Maggie, who isn't really his aunt, but she's just such a close family friend that he calls her as such. In reality, she's more of a nanny, and Curse also has a dedicated nanny, so that role is kind of split into two characters. But another similarity is what happens to each respective aunt character. In Child's Play, Chucky pushes Aunt Maggie through the window of the high-rise apartment, and in Curse, he rolls Aunt Nika's wheelchair through a railing, sending her off the second-floor landing in the foyer. If you're an observant Chucky fan, you may have noticed the first big confirmation that Chucky is actually alive. When Alice finds him in the bathroom, he's got bloodshot eyes. It's actually in the previous movie, Seed of Chucky, that we see what happens to the doll's eyes when the awakening ritual is performed on them. So this means that Alice's new doll is, in fact, possessed like the dolls that we've seen throughout the franchise. When Chucky starts taking victims at the house, Nika's brother-in-law, Ian, starts to point the finger at her. The situation is somewhat similar to the plot of the 1982 film The Thing, Thing featuring Richard Masur. It makes me wonder if the name of Nika's physician, Dr. Masur, is an intentional reference.
Dr. Masur said I was fine.
Dr. Masur said that extreme stress, any kind of even mild shock.
They pronounce it a little bit funny in the movie, but if you look at the script and subtitles, it's spelled the same way that Richard Masur spells his name. It might not be an intentional reference, but it's an uncommon enough name to make me entertain the possibility. After the very tense dinner scene, Nika brings the doll upstairs in the elevator when the power goes out. And when the lights come back on, she sees this. The doll's head had spun around 180 degrees, leading to this very unsettling moment with Alice.
Hey, wanna play?
This is a move we saw Chucky make to scare Damien in the beginning of Bride, which at the time I mentioned as being a reference to The Exorcist, but I guess now he's just absorbed that into his own repertoire. We see it again later in the film. Nika would soon discover the truth about Charles Lee Ray on the internet, and the articles contain some previously unknown information. Charles Lee Ray's crimes would eventually be covered on the podcast Hack and Slash nearly a decade later. If a character in the world of Chucky wanted to listen to this podcast, a good option for them would be Amazon Music. Amazon Music has more than 10 million free podcast episodes to listen to, including mine, if I had one. Which as of right now, I don't. But you can listen to the breathtaking true crime podcast Dr. Death Miracle Man, which is on Amazon Music 2 weeks before other platforms. Personally, I think I'll be listening to the Let's Read podcast for some scary stories from my friend who claimed that he has no arms after I challenged him to a push-up contest. But Amazon Music isn't just for listening to podcasts. They also have music. Believe it or not. There's this feature that gives you fun facts about the band that you've been listening to, so I've been testing my Weezer trivia. I know more than you. For a limited time, new customers can try Amazon Music unlimited free for 3 months. No credit card required. Go to amazon.com/CZsWorld. Wait, what? Amazon.com/CZsWorld? That exists? Oh wow, this is for real. Link in description. It renews automatically, cancel anytime, terms apply, bye. Or stay here actually, we're going back to the video. You may be wondering why this movie is called Curse of Chucky. It could be that this doll is cursed by the soul of Charles Lee Ray using voodoo, but that happens all the way back in the first movie.
Just keep your fucking mouth shut.
Chucky, stop cursing.
Oh, so that's why it's called Curse of Chucky. This is also a callback to a line from Tyler in Child's Play 3, who is similarly not a fan of Chucky's foul mouth.
Yes, sir.
Charles, stop swearing.
After Alice recounts the obscene things that Chucky said to her mom, she also mentions this curious detail.
He says there is no God.
And we hear Chucky himself say this later in the movie.
There is no God.
Kind of a strange thing to say for someone who literally is only alive because an ancient voodoo god lent him some of his power. Has Chucky forgotten about that or what? I guess maybe what he meant to say was your god doesn't exist. The voodoo stuff is a smaller part of the story than ever before, but when we flash back to 88, the room that Charles holds Sarah Pierce captive in is decorated with voodoo artifacts, and the knife that he uses to maim her pregnant belly has a white snake on it. If you've seen my horror history episode on Dambella, the Haitian deity that Charles calls upon to transfer souls, you know that in the voodoo religion, Dambella is believed to be a white snake being, which we see briefly painted on Charles' wall in Child's Play 1. If you don't watch horror history, you're a fucking loser. Go back to rolling around in a bathtub full of Cheetos and eating them. Early on, Curse of Chucky focuses on building its own characters and atmosphere rather than continuing the story from the previous movies. When Nika contacts the delivery company to find out where the doll was sent from, she hears the words evidence depository, meaning that something happened between the end of Seed, where Chucky was in pieces around LA, and the beginning of Curse, where he's put together and mailed. I think we're supposed to assume that the police eventually collected the pieces and Tiffany acquired them and reassembled him, just like she did in the opening of Bride, where we see Chucky's remains locked up in an evidence room. The movie doesn't really acknowledge the older films at all until Nika researches the doll's past. The search results rank from most recent events to the oldest, starting with the Unsolved Los Angeles Homicide website that details the events of Seed, then the Niagara Falls and Hackensack homicide links, both locations that Chucky and Tiffany terrorized in Bride, then there's the Kent Military Academy homicide investigation from the aftermath of Child's Play 3, the Chicago double homicide case which involves Kevin and Joanne Simpson from Child's Play 2, and then finally the Chicago triple homicide, aka Aunt Maggie, Eddie Caputo, and Dr. Ardmore in Child's Play 1. Nika then looks at the newspaper archives, which mention that Charles Lee Ray was the chief suspect of a local kidnapping. This is an early reveal of what we learned later in the movie. Sarah Pierce is the woman who was kidnapped. Of course, this text isn't on screen long enough to read it, but I love when there are little clues like that you can go back to. Her research is interrupted when the electricity in the house goes haywire because upstairs, Chucky kicked over a bucket of water to electrocute the nanny, Jill. This is seriously the worst outlet placement ever. Was this house designed by EA?
Women. Can't live with them. Period.
That might be a reference to Bride of Chucky, where Chuck and his woman literally just bicker for the entire movie. Also, you have to wonder what was going through Barb's head during this scene. I don't know what Tiffany was complaining about in Bride. Okay, it's a knife. But this scene showcases one of the cool things about this movie, which is that Chucky has gotten better at being a killer doll. Gone are the days of him trying to overpower people who are 4 times bigger than him. Now it's all about surprise and psychological manipulation, which is honestly way scarier. And the choice to have Nika in a wheelchair is brilliant, because when there finally is a physical confrontation, her handicap really levels the playing field. In my previous episodes, I talked about how the Bride and Seed arc was influenced by the Scream franchise, but between the focus on suspense rather than violence, the twist ending, and the use of a disabled character who finds a way to use her disability to her advantage, I'm guessing that Curse might have been more inspired by the works of M. Night Shyamalan. Seriously, Nika using her own legs as an axe board is the biggest alpha move I've ever seen. I don't know why Ian doesn't try to stop the axe whatsoever, but whatever, Nika's the last one now. She uses that axe to cut Chucky's head off, something that happens to him in both Child's Play 1 and Seed of Chucky, but this time is notably different because his head just pops off like you'd expect a doll head to. There's no blood or guts, which means he probably hasn't been resurrected for very long and hasn't started to turn human yet, as he does in the other movies. Although the consistency with this rule is about as consistent as my Instagram posting schedule. As usual, Chucky getting dismembered does not slow him down, and he launches into a flashback of everything that led up to his original death in the opening of Child's Play. In his flashback, you can actually see the home video that the Pierce family watched earlier being filmed. I thought that was kind of a cool detail. The flashback also ties together some loose threads from the beginning of the movie. Remember how I pointed out the mother's medication bottles letting us know that she isn't well? In the home movie scene, Barb mentions that this started around the time that their dad passed away.
A couple weeks before Nika was born. Mom was never the same after that.
We're led to believe that one or both of these events affected Sarah's mental health, but the flashback shows us that it was actually her being kidnapped by Charles Lee Ray. He brings her sunflowers while she's in captivity, and this explains why she's seen painting a sunflower in the opening and why her attic is filled with artwork of these sunflowers. It's basically some kind of coping mechanism for the horrors that Charles subjected her to. Nika is just the next target in Sarah's family tree, but when the police arrive, Chucky goes into Barbie mode and she ends up getting blamed for all the murders. They could have ended the movie right there and I would have been satisfied, but what we get instead is an additional 6 minutes of fan service for enthusiasts of the Chucky continuity, and honestly, I'm here for it. And it's totally packed with interesting details, including the previously unknown fates of beloved legacy characters. After the trial, this police officer takes the Chucky doll along in his squad car, and what would follow is almost an exact recreation of the opening of Bride of Chucky, where he makes a phone call where he mentions,
Don't forget my money.
and investigates the evidence bag right before getting his throat slit from behind by Tiffany's nail file. Yes, she uses the same one from Bride. Then we see her shipping Chucky to a new destination, which makes a lot more sense than Chucky shipping himself in 3 and 5, and he arrives at Alice's new home and tells her that he wants to play.
And now, it's time to play.
Hide and seek?
Hide the soul.
Hide the Soul is the same name of the game that he uses when he's trying to perform the Dembella chant on Tyler in the 3rd movie.
Couldn't we just play hide and seek? What do you call this game anyway?
Hide the soul.
We are led to believe that he's successful, making this his first successful transfer from the doll body into a human body. Again, they could have ended the movie there, and I probably would have been satisfied, but we would have missed out on the post-credits scene. For the first time in over 14 years, we're reintroduced to Andy Barkley, who receives a package before his birthday from the hottest delivery person that I've ever seen. We hear him on the phone with his mom when he says this.
Yeah, I'm definitely coming for my birthday tomorrow.
Back in the original movie, Chucky was his birthday present from his mom to him, which means Chucky is attacking him 1 day shy of the anniversary of their first meeting. He also asks,
How's Mike doing?
He's presumably talking about Mike Norris, the police officer that helped save him and his mom all of those years ago. It's nice to see that they kept in touch. There are a lot of interesting items in Andy's apartment. We see a picture of him and his mom from when he was 6, a picture of Kyle from Child's Play 2, which is actually a clue that they're still in contact, as we would see in the next movie. You can also see his diploma from Kent Military Academy, which tells us that despite getting arrested at the end of Child's Play 3, he was still able to finish school and graduate, which also kind of leads into the next movie, Cult of Chucky, where we see his familiarity with guns from the academy has stuck with him over the years. But if you want to hear me talk about Cult of Chucky, then you'll have to join me in the next episode of Things You Missed. When that video comes out, you'll find it there on the left, but in the meantime, make sure you subscribe to CZsWorld for new horrors every week, ring the death bell and select all notifications, and I will see you in the next one. Assuming we both survive.